Morning, everybody. We are in Mark 13 this morning. I need a little bit of ventilation. There we go. Sun feels good. We're in Mark 13, and this is kind of Mark's equivalent of Matthew chapter 24, the apocalyptic prophecy from Yeshua of end times and what does it look like. So prior to this, he was in the temple doing battle as always with the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the scribes. And so Yeshua and his apostles, they leave the temple, and starting in 13, and as Yeshua, went out of the set-apart place, the temple, one of his taught ones said to him, "Teacher, see what stones and what buildings." Hey man, look at the architecture, this is cool. And Yeshua answering said to him, "Do you see these great buildings? Not one stone shall be left upon another at all, which shall not be thrown down." So these are things that are gonna get destroyed. And a lot of people say, oh, all of this refers to 70 AD when the temple was destroyed. Maybe. Maybe it refers beyond that. People, and here's the thing with prophecy, man. Biblical prophecy, especially end times prophecy, I've heard it said that perhaps Yeshua was talking about something that has already happened. The first destruction of the temple. I'm like, contextually, I don't see that. But okay, they're like, prophecy can go both ways because the Father exists outside of our understanding of time, which is absolutely true. But I don't pretend to understand how that works. So in context here, it sounds like Yeshua is talking about something that is going to occur after the period of time that we're reading, which could have been the destruction of the temple in 70 AD, and it could be something that's yet still to come. I don't know. And most of the people who say that they do know end up being wrong. So, caveat. And as he sat on the Mount of Olives opposite the set-apart place, so they go up the Mount of Olives and they're looking at the temple. Kepha, Peter, and Jacob, and John, and Andrew asked him separately, "Say to us, when shall these events be, and what shall be the sign when all this is going to be accomplished? When is this going to happen, and what should we be looking for?" And Yeshua began to say to them, "Take heed that no one leads you astray. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am he, and they shall lead many astray. And when you hear of fightings and reports of fightings, wars and rumors of wars, do not be troubled. It has to take place, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and reign against reign. People group against people group, and country or kingdom against country and kingdom." So this is ethnic race wars, ethnic cleansings, things of that nature, and then civil war and country against country. "And there shall be earthquakes in various places." I believe the King James says diverse places. Is that correct?
Yes, diverse places.
There will be earthquakes in diverse places. "And there shall be scarcities of food and disturbances. These are the beginnings of birth pains." Now, right now, regardless of whether or not people want to admit it, we are at the inception of food scarcity on the planet yet again. That does not necessarily mean we are in end times. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Bad things happening in the United States of America, and bad compared to what, do not necessarily mean that it is the end of an age and Yeshua is returning. Yeshua will return whenever he's good and ready to return. It's in his timing, not ours. Again, the Father and the Son are outside of our understanding of time. But What the heck was that noise? Is that a chicken? Yeah. So, just because things get bad here in the U.S. doesn't mean it's end times. By the time of Abraham, in the earliest parts of this book, the world is on their third food scarcity. And this is a point I make all the time to people who are Bible believers but think preparedness is stupid. Like, have you read your word? It's a constant theme throughout the word. I mean, Yeshua does say, if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one, right? That comes right out of his mouth. So should you have a Glock and an AR? Probably. But it definitely talks repeatedly about food scarcity. I mean, the story of Joseph is in large part a story of food scarcity. 7 years of fat, 7 years of lean. And by the 6th year, during that famine, people were selling themselves into slavery just to stay fed. If that doesn't prove the point that you should have some food put up, man, I don't know what does. And so here in Mark 13, which is basically, you know, Matthew 24 from a slightly different perspective. Sounds like there's a bunch of chickens over there that just want to get shot. We see yet again food scarcities and disturbances. I wonder if those disturbances are things like disturbances in services, like PG&E, you know, or we just had a major power outage in this area of the world, and things are getting, as things become more and more technologically dependent, interestingly enough, systems are becoming less and less robust. It seems like the more technology is applied to a system, the less robust it becomes. That's why people are like, I want a smart grid. I'm like, I don't. I want a dumb grid. I want it held together with bolts and rivets. And if something breaks, somebody has to drive out there and look at it and fix it with their own 2 hands, because that's really hard to hack. I don't want it all electronic, but I digress. These are the beginnings of birth pains. But take heed to yourselves, for they shall deliver you up to councils and to congregations. You shall be beaten, and you shall be brought before rulers and kings, sovereigns, for my sake, for a witness to them. Why for a witness to them? So that they see your belief in Yeshua and that witnesses to them. I have said this before and I'll say it again. The bravest person that I am aware of ever is the second guy in Syria when they started cutting the heads off of believers. The first guy, when they said, who here believes in Messiah? And that guy raised his hand and they took a dull machete and started sawing. That guy had balls. The second guy, when they said, who else believes? Right here. That guy, I want faith as deep as that guy. It's like, yeah, I believe. I'm next. Why? And you shall be brought before rulers and kings for my sake, for a witness to them. And the good news has to be proclaimed first to all nations, people groups. What does yours say?
It says, and the gospel must be published among all nations.
It says the gospel must be published among all nations. That's like the Gideons printing Bibles and distributing them. Interesting. This coffee is extraordinary. I cannot wait to get more. And when they lead you away and deliver you up, do not worry beforehand what you are to say. But as whatever is given you in that hour, speak that. For it is not you who are speaking, but the set-apart Spirit, but the Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh. And brother shall deliver up brother to death, and the father his child. And children shall rise up against parents, and shall put them to death. Civil war, balkanization. I think that is entirely possible within the next, 18 months to 7 years, long range in the United States. But again, who are we to think we're so special? Because, you know, this is something we were talking about earlier, rapture theory. Well, my Jesus would never let me go through that. Well, your Jesus is also the Jesus of all those believers in the Middle East who are getting murdered for their faith. Why would he not let you go through that? But he lets them go through that. We want to, as American Christians, we want to be special little snowflakes. And that concept is not found in this word. No, Yeshua tells us himself right here, they shall deliver you up. You shall be beaten and brought before rulers, and they will lead you away and deliver you up. And brothers shall deliver up brother to death, and you shall be hated by all because of my name. But he who shall have endured to the end, he shall be saved. And when you see the abomination that lays waste, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, set up where it should not be, he who reads, let him understand. Then let those who are in Judah flee to the mountains. The abomination that lays waste, the abomination of desolation. There is a ton. If you could weigh the internet, there are literal tons of rabbit holes and trails and things that you can go down with the abomination of desolation, the abomination that lays waste. And there are people that say that that abomination is the sacrificing of a pig on the Temple Mount. There are people that believe that it is going to be the type of thing, it's an abomination that literally lays waste to the population in that area or the world. There's lots of beliefs on this. I feel like, me personally, speculation as to what it is. It's like when Congress was investigating pornography. Well, define porn. We'll know it when we see it, sir. And that's kind of what I feel like this is. It's going to be one of those, oh, that's that. The abomination of desolation. And I also really have been convicted in this direction lately that the abomination is corrupted flesh. Yeshua tells us, you know, in end times it'll be like unto the days of Noah. And in the days of Noah, all flesh was corrupted. Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and their 3 wives were found righteous in the eyes of Yah and were spared. 8 people amongst the entirety of the planet at that time were spared, and everybody else was done away with because of corrupted flesh. I think the abomination is corrupted flesh, and I believe, based upon the work of Rob Skiba, who I agree with some of what he says, not all of what he says, but so simmer down, internet. But Rob Skiba talks about the beast of Revelation, and the word there for beast is therion, and therion means something to the effect of a hybrid animal, an abomination. And that beast, I believe, is going to have corrupted flesh as well. And so this abomination of desolation, and when you see the abomination that lays waste, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, set up where it should not be, he who reads, let him understand, then let those who are in Judah flee to the mountains. One could say, let those who are in the cities flee to the mountains. And he who is on the housetop, let him not go down into the house, nor come in to take whatever out of his house. And he who is in the field, let him not go back and get his cloak. When this happens, these things are happening quickly. I read a great book. I talked about it in the last video that we did. I'll talk about it more as going forward. The book was called Divine Numerics and the Coming World War by Dr. Michael McGee. And he makes a point based upon this chapter and several others in the Bible that just because there is quite possibly, very likely, a biblical timeline working, doesn't necessarily mean that we are to know the intricacies of that timeline until the last minute. And that's what Yeshua is saying here, right? And in fact, in the prophet Daniel, it's 1,290 days versus 1,335 days. And so there's a 45-day period in there, probably at the beginning, that from the abomination of desolation, When that happens, a clock starts ticking, 1,290 days. And I'm not going to go into all that prophecy because, frankly, it's hearsay and speculation. I don't know. And I'm not educated enough on it to add my own voice to what is already a discombobulated conversation of hearsay and speculation. And I don't feel inspired in that direction to provide any type of clarity on the subject. I would muddy the waters further if I was to jump in and flap around and probably drown in those waters because it's not my expertise. But when these things happen, hey, if you're on the housetop, let him not go down into the house nor come in to take whatever. Like, you don't have time, right? And he who was in the field, let him not go back to get his cloak. And woe to those who are pregnant and to those nursing children in those days. And pray. Where is it? Right there. And pray that your flight does not take place in winter. That your flight does not take place in... You're going to have to get out. Like, it's making it clear here. Those who are in Judah flee to the mountains. You're going to have to get out. Pray that it takes place not in winter. Why? Because bugging out in the winter sucks. I could tell you as a preparedness-minded individual, a survivalist, a prepper, my winter loadout is way heavier and more bulky than my spring, summer, fall loadout, right? And around here, ice, snow, you know, forget it. You know, bugging out in Florida in the winter is, you know, hop on the golf cart and go for a drive. Around here, not so much. For in those days there shall be a distress such as has not been from the beginning of creation, which Elohim created until this time, nor shall ever be. It's going to be unlike any other days, the distress in those times. And if the Master, Yeshua, had not shortened those days, no flesh would have been saved. There's an entire shortening of days argument there. Is that the day themselves that gets shortened from 24 hours to 16 hours, or is it the number of days from 1,290 days, or from 1,335 days to 1,290 days? I don't know. I don't know. And I don't know anybody definitively that I've researched that does know. I think there's a lot of voices in that conversation, and I think maybe based upon the actual methodical research and investigation of that data, you might come to an understanding of it, but I don't have a fullness of understanding on any of that. So when it says shortening of days, I don't know. And I don't know if it's the day itself. You know, in Revelation, we see that the very days will be shortened, right? Okay, so that the elect might be saved. Well, who's the elect? Revelation 12:17. Those that have a testimony of Yeshua Messiah and keep the commandments, right? Like those of us trying to walk in the way of Messiah. But even us, if it wasn't for the shortening of days, we would be deceived. That S is crazy. Think about that. I mean, as firmly as I'm sitting here talking to you, talking to this camera, watching that chicken walk around, it's like this very moment, even the very elect, and not that I'm some super high-speed saint, but us, we would be deceived if it was not for the shortening of days. That's crazy. And we need to remain mindful of that, you know? And if anyone then says to you, look, here is the Messiah, or look there, do not believe it. For false messiahs and false prophets shall rise and show signs and wonders to lead astray, if possible, even the chosen ones. Somebody comes to you and says, yo, Yeshua has returned. Has he? And if you take heed, see, I have forewarned you of all of it. But in those days, after that distress, the sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give its light, and the stars of heaven shall fall. Isaiah 13:10. And the powers in the heavens shall be shaken. Isaiah 34:4. And then they shall see the Son of Adam coming in the clouds, Daniel 7:13, with much power and esteem. And then he shall send his messengers and assemble his chosen ones from the four winds, 4, divine numerics, represents the entirety of, like the 4 corners of the world. North, south, east, west, all of it. So from the 4 winds means from all over the earth, right? So assemble his chosen ones from all over the earth, from the farthest part of the earth to the farthest part of the heaven. And learn this parable from the fig tree. Yes, sir, learn this parable. When its branch has already become tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So there are signs, there are indications. So you also, when you see these taking place, when you see what? Everything that he just described, right? And again, nation shall rise against nation, rain against rain, earthquakes in diverse places, scarcities of food and disturbances, and these are the beginning of the birth pains. And when you see these taking place, know that it is near, at the door. Truly, I say to you, this generation shall by no means pass away till all this takes place. So I have, in Matthew 24, I talked about that. I said, I really don't understand what that means because I was getting the context wrong. I said, you know, this generation, I believe at the time he was speaking to, who's he speaking to? These guys he's up on the Mount of Olives with. Peter, Jacob, John, and Andrew. This generation that he was talking to shall truly not pass away. I'm like, well, that was a couple thousand years ago. Pretty sure they passed away. Well, as my fullness of understanding continues to grow, I am now of the understanding that, and briefly, this is why you should spend time in your word, because things are revealed to you, right? Because just in the short time it's taken to read from Matthew 24 to read to Mark 13, you know, what's that, a couple dozen chapters, I believe that what he's saying here is the generation in which all these things take place, that will be the last generation. They will not pass away before all these things come to fullness, before there's a completion of this prophecy that Yeshua himself is giving us. Truly I say to you, this generation shall by no means pass away till all this takes place. The heaven and the earth, which again makes it sound like this would not be something that has happened in the past, because if all this had taken place and that generation would have passed away, that would have been the last generation. We wouldn't be here having this conversation. So to me, this prophesies towards future events. The heaven and the earth shall pass away, but my word shall by no means pass away. But concerning that day and the hour no one knows, not even the messengers in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Take heed, watch and pray, for you do not know when the time is. As a man going abroad, having left his house and given authority to his servants, and to each his work, and commanded the doorkeeper to watch. Watch therefore, for you do not know when the master of the house is coming, in the evening or at midnight or as the crowing of the cock. Hello, goat puppy. Or in the morning, lest coming suddenly he should find you sleeping. And what I say to you, I say to all, watch. And that's Mark 13. It's pretty straightforward. We're not going to get into Mark 14 because it's a long chapter and it's a different context than 13, because 13 is prophetic and 14 is narrative. Although it's very interesting for all my people who are kind of sitting on the fence with all this. The very first line in 14 is, now the Pesach, Passover, and the festival of matzah, unleavened bread, was after 2 days. Literally, part of 14 is Yeshua and his disciples figuring out where they're going to spend Passover. Why? Because they observed Passover. Why? Because they were Hebrews, not Jews. Hebrews, not Christians. They didn't go eat a Sunday ham. They didn't celebrate Easter, because how do you celebrate your own death and resurrection before it happens? And also because Easter is Ishtar, which is Ashtaroth, which is pagan, lower G, goddess of fertility, which is why we have bunny rabbits who reproduce like bunny rabbits, laying eggs, ovum, which is the symbol for fertility. Like, all that's just pagan. It's just straight up pagan. It sucks. if you've been raised in it your whole life like I was, that this is when we celebrate the death and resurrection. I'm like, oh, it turns out actually no, that has nothing to do with this at all. What a bunch of horse pucky. But here in 14, which we'll get into next week, you can see pretty quickly, oh, look, these dudes are looking for a place to celebrate Passover. Ergo, they celebrate Passover. So as we go about the business of doing our best to make the Father smile and to walk out this life like Messiah and do what Messiah did, we should celebrate Passover. Where's Passover? Leviticus 23. What else is in Leviticus 23? All the other feasts that we're supposed to keep as a command for you and all your generations forever to be as a covenant between Yahweh and his people. Oh, wow, there's a real fullness here. There's a real fullness to my understanding of Yeshua and what he represented. Matthew 5:17, I came not to destroy the Torah and the prophets, but to complete it, but to embody it, plerau. It's like, oh, there's real meaning to this. The Passover lamb. I'm covered by the blood of the lamb. What lamb? Exodus 12, the Passover lamb, which Yeshua was. Oh, wow. Wow. That's a lot more meaningful than a rabbit that poops eggs, right? Regardless of what traditions we might keep. So I'm looking forward to doing 14 next week, but here in 13, we have this end times prophecy of basically a heads up from Yeshua. He literally says, and what I say to you, I say to all. Watch. We are to be vigilant over this and pay attention to these things. And so I'm kind of an optimistic, apocalyptic person. I'm like, yeah, the world's gonna end. It's gonna go to hell in a handbasket. But I also firmly believe, hey, I'm not that special. And if I'm not that special, then it's entirely possible that the United States goes to hell in a handbasket, and that doesn't mean that it's the return of Yeshua. That being said, we have food scarcity. I think economic collapse is, or at least a serious softening of our economy is a given. Wars and rumors of wars, yeah, we've got that going. Ethnos against ethnos, race war, yeah, we have that. I think we're going to see a balkanization of the United States in the near future, because I don't think the federal government can continue to self-support, and I think enough people have realized that why would I continue paying these people? They suck at their job, they cost me a bunch of money, and I get no return on my investment. And so, no more federal authority. I think it's entirely possible that we experience end time symptoms in the United States in the near future. Not even the Son knows the day of his return. But if the Father says, Yeshua, now, he'll be here, and he'll be here that quick. If you're in the field, don't even go back to get your coat. Flee to the mountains, bro. Whew. That's serious. You know, it's that quick. And so the takeaway on this is we are to watch and watch diligently. Yeshua tells us, watch, pay attention. But do so not in fear. I'm not fearful of whatever might come. The concern that I have and have always had is that if it will come in my lifetime, I want it to come selfishly, because my timing and the Father's timing are two completely different things. But I want it to come while I'm young enough and capable enough to contribute to the betterment of the whole myself, rather than have to see my children shoulder the burden, right? And so I selfishly, as a parent, want to shelter my children from the hardship that will come and bear that to the best of my ability myself and insulate them from that. But it's not my will be done. It's the Father's will be done, and it's his perfect timing, not my imperfect timing. But other than that, send it. Worst case scenario, as I've said before on camera, worst case scenario, I die, okay? I go home, I'm going to report in, be like, hey, what's up? It's me. Remember that busted up sinner from YouTube? I'm here now. Yep, covered by the blood of the Lamb. Literally, I understand what that means. Bless you, Father. Thank you. You're awesome. Where do I get armor and an axe from? Because I'm ready. Send me back. I want to go slaughter legions of demons. I'm in. Like, oh, there's warfare? I'm in. Let's go. Like, I want to be dual-wielding broadswords or something. Like, I don't care. Like, let's go. Where's the battle? Send me. I'm in. Like, that's worst-case scenario from a worldly view. It's like, end. Party. Let's do this thing. All right? So, watch. Shalom, y'all.